In 2006, a family drove into the Mojave Desert. They were never seen again. That line was passed around like folklore, a chilling reminder that some places, no matter how open, how sunlit, still keep secrets. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where in the world you're watching from. It's always wild to see how far these stories travel. The Brannon family wasn't famous. They weren't criminals or fugitives. They were, by all accounts, painfully normal. A mother, a father, a teenage daughter, and a little boy with a camcorder obsession. No enemies, no debts, just a spontaneous weekend trip into the desert that turned into one of the most baffling missing persons cases in California's history. They left their suburban home in Riverside, California on a Friday morning. Their destination? The Mojave National Preserve. A family trip before the eldest daughter, Madison, left for college. One final adventure. They never checked into their motel in Baker. No 911 calls, no confirmed sightings, and no trace of them was ever found. Not a single one. For the first few years, the story lingered in the background of California news, occasionally resurfacing when another body was found in the desert or a random vehicle was spotted abandoned off some dusty back road. But over time, as the years dragged on and the leads ran dry, it became something else. A legend. Hikers would whisper it around fires. Locals in small desert towns like Kelso and Nipton would lower their voices when they spoke of it. Everyone had a theory. Alien abduction, desert cults, government black sites. But there was one detail that always returned. The road. That unmarked road. According to an off-duty ranger who claimed to have crossed paths with the Brannons, they had stopped at a gas station near the southern entrance to the preserve and asked for directions to a lesser-known scenic trail. He told them it didn't exist. They seemed confused, said they had seen it on a printed map. Then they left. Later that week, the ranger returned to that same area. He said he felt watched, that his radio kept cutting in and out, that he saw a faint road carved into the sand, one not on any park map, but the tire tracks stopped a few hundred feet in. Beyond that, nothing. He didn't go further. He never did again. By 2012, the case had gone cold. No sightings, no bones, no belongings. The Mojave had swallowed them whole. Until now. June 14th, 2024, Mojave National Preserve. Two campers, Ethan Moore and Dylan Reyes, both 23, had parked near an old fire road northeast of Hole-in-the-Wall campground. They weren't there for sightseeing. They were after petroglyphs, rumored to exist in a narrow, rarely visited canyon past the marked trails. They were well equipped, GPS, maps, extra water, and a drone. It was nearly 11 a.m. when they stumbled onto something strange. First, it was the smell. Metallic, dry, but sour, like heated rust and rot. Then the glint. Not a rock, not a landmark. Something reflective buried beneath years of sun-baked sand. As they brushed it away, more details emerged. Rusted chrome, a cracked windshield, and the unmistakable curve of a once yellow SUV. A Toyota Highlander, sun-bleached to a pale ghost of its original color. Dune grass had grown through the broken grille. The hood looked melted on one side, as if exposed to immense heat. One of the rear windows had shattered inward. Inside was worse. A child's plastic toy lay half-melted in the front passenger seat. On the dash, faded stickers, Hello Kitty, Power Rangers, a fading peace sign. In the back, bones. Not many, but unmistakably human. Small. There were bags, zippered, decayed, still sitting in the trunk. One of them held a college brochure, sun-bleached but legible. UC Davis, class of 2010. Madison Brannon. By 4 p.m., Rangers had arrived and cordoned off the area. At 6:23 p.m., the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office confirmed via the VIN-AMI number that the vehicle did, in fact, belong to Stephen Brannon, last seen in July of 2006. After 18 years, the Brannon case was no longer a mystery. It was an active crime scene. Word spread fast. News trucks rolled through Baker and Barstow. Reddit threads exploded. True crime podcasts scrambled to release emergency episodes, and for those who had been there from the beginning, especially locals who never stopped talking about that road, it was both confirmation and escalation. Because where the SUV was found, there was no road. Not even a faded trail, no path wide enough for a vehicle to reach, no logical way in or out. It sat alone in a dead zone. No wildlife, no birdsong, no footprints beyond the camper's own. And then came the next twist. When forensics began documenting the site, they found something in the glove compartment, a mini cassette recorder. It was old, nearly destroyed by time, but the Rangers placed it in an evidence bag. The label on it read, July 16th, Night 3. That was the date they were last seen alive. The desert had kept the secret for almost 2 decades, but it hadn't erased it. And now, the Brannon case, once dismissed as just another lost-in-the-desert tragedy, was back in the spotlight. Except this time, it wasn't just about where they went. Now it was about what they saw before they vanished. Because something about this didn't feel like an accident. And the Mojave? It wasn't done revealing what it had buried. We didn't know what we were looking at, but we knew we weren't supposed to find it. Ethan Moore, camper, recorded in his police interview, June 14, 2024. The Mojave isn't just hot, it's oppressive. Even in the early morning, the air feels like it's pressing down on you, dry, heavy, merciless. And that's exactly how it felt to Ethan and Dylan as they cut off trail, weaving through scrub brush and weather-worn rock formations in a part of the preserve they'd never seen marked on a map. They weren't thrill-seekers, just quiet outdoor types. Both had read rumors online of ancient petroglyphs in a box canyon that hadn't been cataloged by the Park Service, one of those forgotten places whispered about in hiking forums. Go at your own risk, someone had posted. It wasn't on Google Maps. It wasn't on anything official. But one grainy screenshot of what looked like prehistoric carvings had been enough to convince them. That was their goal. What they found wasn't. The SUV was almost a part of the earth now. Half covered in sand and desert debris, it had no right being that far off-grid. The nearest dirt road was over 12 miles away. There was no way a vehicle could have made it here without leaving a trail. And yet, there it was, as if it had grown out of the sand like a rusted fossil. It wasn't just old, it was burned. The front hood was warped and partially collapsed. The paint had peeled away, revealing corroded metal baked by nearly 2 decades of sun. The tires were flat and partially shredded. On the windshield, what remained of it, were pockmarks of heat fractures. But it was the inside that stopped them cold. Dylan was the first to peer through the cracked rear window. What he saw made him stagger back, his voice catching in his throat. Inside the back seat were the sun-bleached remains of what looked like a child's toy, a stuffed animal of some kind. Beneath it, a collapsed backpack, the fabric stiff from rot and time. A rusted, warped cassette camcorder lay across the center console. The screen shattered, the film inside long destroyed. The air that poured from the half-broken glass smelled wrong, dry and stale, with something faintly sour underneath. Then Ethan saw it, near the floorboard by the front passenger seat. A single human femur, small, fragile, a child's. They backed away, called for help, and waited in silence. The Rangers arrived just over an hour later, followed by officers from the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office. Within hours, a full forensic team was on site. The area was sealed off, and the campers were interviewed separately. Dillon reportedly told officers, "It felt like the desert didn't want us there, like we broke something by finding it." As investigators began documenting the vehicle, the evidence was undeniable. The license plate, sun-faded and partially melted, was still legible. 8 NIK 257. It matched the DMV record for a 2005 Toyota Highlander registered to Stephen Brannon. The Brannons had been declared legally dead in 2013 after no trace of them was ever found. The last confirmed sighting had been at a gas station in Barstow on the morning of July 14, 2006. They were supposed to stay one night in a motel before driving through Mojave to meet relatives in Nevada. They never arrived. Now, 18 years later, their vehicle had reappeared, miles from any known road or trail. Inside the SUV, investigators found a warped cassette camcorder in the front seat, a child's backpack with faded initials written in Sharpie, L. Brannon, melted fragments of what appeared to be photo negatives, a college acceptance letter, still faintly readable, Madison Brannon, UC Davis. Human bone fragments, including one confirmed femur and a partial jawbone. The rear seat was sunken, partially collapsed inward. The front dashboard was heavily cracked, but still intact. On the cracked screen of the SUV's dashboard radio was a single, frozen timestamp. 7:19 p.m., July 16, 2006. Exactly 2 days after the Brannons were last seen. What happened in those 2 days? Where had they gone? And how had this vehicle, this family, been hidden for so long? As the news broke, it spread like wildfire. Mojave Mystery reopened, family missing, since 2006, found in desert vehicle. KTLA 5 breaking news. They were never meant to be found. Hikers stumble onto ghost vehicle in the Mojave. Vice News. Within 48 hours, national news crews had made their way to the preserve. The once-forgotten Brannon case was now the country's latest obsession, but behind the headlines and hashtags, the investigation grew darker. Something about the SUV didn't make sense. The car's frame had burn damage, but no burn marks were found in the sand around it. The tires were slashed, not naturally degraded. Cut. And then there was the glove compartment. Inside, evidence techs found something nearly destroyed but still intact, a mini cassette tape labeled with a shaky hand. July 16th, Night 3. They had no idea yet what was on the tape, but what they did know was this. The Brannons didn't just disappear. They were erased, and now, whatever had hidden their story for nearly 2 decades was beginning to crack. One last trip before she leaves the nest. Stephen Brannon, handwritten note on a folded AAA map, July 2006. Before their names became a headline. Before the SUV was swallowed by sand. The Brannons were just a family like yours. Stephen Brannon was 43, a high school chemistry teacher from Santa Clarita who wore dad's sneakers, told terrible jokes, and always kept a cooler in the trunk filled with root beer and turkey sandwiches. He had a deep love for national parks, old vinyl records, and VHS tapes that he still refused to throw away. His wife, Dana, was 41, a dental hygienist who scrapbooked every vacation, every birthday, every first day of school. Organized, thoughtful, slightly anxious. She always packed too much. Her purse was a mobile pharmacy, Advil, Band-Aids, backup batteries. You name it, she had it. Their daughter, Madison, 17, senior year, class of '06, was headed to UC Davis in the fall. Smart, sarcastic, artsy. She made zines with her friends, loved indie bands you'd never heard of, and kept a digital camera around her neck wherever they went. Her parents called her Mads, though she preferred M. She was excited to leave, but scared too. They all felt it. And then there was little Noah, 9 years old, obsessed with dinosaurs, alien movies, and his Game Boy Advance. The kind of kid who asked way too many questions at once. His dream vacation involved a UFO sighting, a wild coyote, and a buried treasure, preferably all at once. The Brannons weren't special in the way stories usually demand. But that's what made them matter. July 13th, 2006. The camcorder footage recovered from their home shows a typical suburban morning. Stephen is loading bags into the Highlander, wearing sunglasses and cargo shorts, humming something off-key. Dana is checking a checklist, again. Madison rolls her eyes, filming it all with her mini DV camera. She zooms in on Noah sitting in the driveway with a comic book and says, "This is our last trip before I escape these lunatics." Dana laughs, off camera. "Don't say escape, you'll miss us." Madison, "Maybe, if you let me drive." Stephen from the driver's seat, "Not on this trip, Mads, this road's no joke." Cut to black. Their plan was simple. Leave Santa Clarita early, drive to Barstow, gas up, head into Mojave National Preserve via Kellbaker Road, stay one night at the Silver Sage Motel in Baker. Then drive east toward Nevada, where they'd meet Dana's sister for a final family cookout before Madison moved into her dorm. It was meant to be a farewell to childhood, one last adventure. Dana had printed out the route on MapQuest. Stephen, ever old school, brought his fold-out AAA map and marked stops along the way with red ink. Amboy Crater, Kelso Dunes, Zizix Road, places with names as weird as the heat that swallowed them. Noah had circled the words Desert Tortoise Preserve in green crayon. The last confirmed sighting was July 14th, 2006, around 3:22 p.m. Surveillance footage from a Chevron station off Main Street in Barstow showed the Highlander pulling in. Madison is seen buying Gatorade and sour candy. Dana purchases sunscreen and water bottles. Stephen fuels the car while talking to someone off camera, a man in hiking gear who hasn't been identified to this day. At 3:39 p.m., they drive off, heading toward Baker. They were supposed to check into the Silver Sage by 6 p.m. They never did. No phone calls, no credit card activity, no 911 pings. Just silence. Back home, Madison's bedroom was left untouched. Her acceptance letter still taped above her desk. A suitcase half-packed. One photo of her and her mom at an open house still pinned to the corkboard, both of them smiling, eyes squinting in the sun. Noah's room still smelled faintly like peanut butter and bubble gum. His comic books remained stacked by the bed. One plastic dinosaur on the windowsill faced outward, toward the sun. For days, no one panicked. The family assumed car trouble. Spotty cell signal. Maybe they'd changed plans. But by July 16th, when they missed the cookout and didn't return home, worry turned to dread. Dana's sister called the police. The file was opened. Missing persons, Stephen, Dana, Madison, and Noah Brannon. Last seen, Barstow, California, July 14th, 2006. Vehicle, 2005 Toyota Highlander. Silver gray. California plate, 8 NIC, 257. Search teams canvassed the Mojave roads. Rangers were briefed. Helicopters were launched. Nothing. No tire tracks, no wreckage, not even a receipt or roadside sighting. It was as if the desert swallowed them whole. Years passed. The Brannons faded from the news, except for the occasional Reddit thread or Halloween ghost story. People said they'd driven into a dust storm, or maybe took a wrong turn and ran out of gas. Or worse, someone found them before help could. But no bodies were ever found. No SUV, no closure. The family became a desert myth. Campfire fodder, until 2 campers made a wrong turn and brought it all back. By July 18th, 2006, just 4 days after the Brannons were last seen, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office officially launched a missing persons investigation. The family was now 5 days overdue. Their motel reservation in Baker had gone unused. No one had heard from them, and their Highlander had not been spotted on any security cameras after leaving the Chevron station in Barstow. At first, authorities suspected a delay, perhaps a detour. Mojave was massive and harsh, but families got turned around out there all the time. Maybe they ran out of gas and were waiting out the heat. But by day 6, that optimism had collapsed. The timeline, as reconstructed in 2006. Friday, July 14th, 3:39 p.m. Brannons leave the Chevron in Barstow, heading east toward Baker. Their expected route was along I-15, a well-traveled highway, but they never arrived. Friday, July 14th, 4:20 p.m., estimated. A ranger stationed near the Kelbaker Road entrance later claimed he saw a silver SUV driving unusually slowly along the side of the road. He noted the vehicle as clean and suburban-looking, heading off the paved road onto a service access road rarely used by visitors. He didn't think much of it until the missing persons notice circulated 2 days later. Saturday, July 15th, 8:12 a.m. A Bureau of Land Management employee reports hearing radio interference during his drive between 2 repeater towers along Cinder Cone Road, a stretch known for signal dropouts but never complete dead zones. He said he heard repeating static pulses and a woman's voice, faint, distant, unintelligible. At first he thought it was CB interference. He later admitted, "It sounded like she was asking for help." The audio was never recorded. No further transmissions were picked up. Sunday, July 16th, 7:19 p.m. A strange timestamp appears on the Brannon SUV's dash radio when it's recovered in 2024, matching the date and time of Night 3, as marked on the cassette tape found in the glove compartment. At the time, authorities had no idea what happened that night. Monday, July 17th, all day, no contact from the Brannons. No activity on cell towers, no bank records, no fuel purchases, no ATM attempts. Madison's college email shows no logins. Dana's work voicemail is full. Stephen's phone goes straight to voicemail. Tuesday, July 18th, 6:10 p.m. Dana's sister reports the family officially missing. Law enforcement opens the case and deploys search teams immediately. Over the next 14 days, every road in and out of the Mojave Preserve was combed. Helicopters scanned hundreds of miles of desert terrain. Rangers rode out in ATVs. Dozens of volunteers joined local law enforcement. Heat indexes hit 112 degrees Fahrenheit. Dust storms rolled in almost nightly. They found nothing. No tire tracks, no debris, no roadkill. Not a single item that could be definitively tied to the Brannons. Except for one thing. The road that didn't exist. On July 20th, a ranger named Eduardo Mendez was searching near a restricted fire access road called Echo Spur. It was decommissioned, closed off to public use, and not listed on any printed park maps. But from the ridge above he spotted something unusual. Parallel tire marks, faint and inconsistent, ran for about 150 feet before abruptly vanishing into hard-packed sand. No car, no footprints, no oil stains, no brake marks. Just 2 dusty trails, leading nowhere. He noted the location, reported it to his supervisor, and returned the next day with GPS gear and backup. When they came back, the marks were gone, swept away by the wind. It was after this that things began to slow. Tips dried up. Theories turned fringe. Some suggested the family had fled voluntarily. Others speculated a mechanical failure had led them off course, then dehydration or heat stroke set in. But none of those explanations accounted for the complete absence of evidence. There were no birds picking at bones, no buzzards circling in the air. Not even wildlife camera footage in the outer zones showed a glimpse of their vehicle. The desert had swallowed 4 people without leaving a fingerprint. By November 2006, the official search was suspended. By May 2007, the case file was marked cold. Even though the investigation was shelved, something strange happened in the years after. Every 18 months or so, someone would submit a new tip, always anonymous. Sometimes a voicemail with GPS coordinates, sometimes a letter. In one case, an unmarked envelope with a single Polaroid showing an SUV half buried in sand and what looked like a child's shoe nearby. The image was too blurry to confirm. Investigators could never trace its origin. But the location? Somewhere near the southern edge of Devil's Playground, a vast stretch of uninhabited dunes that shifts constantly, swallowing roads, signage, and history. One ranger called it, "the place where the desert forgets you." What would cause a family with working phones, maps, full gas, and food to veer off the highway into nothing? What made them leave the road? What happened in those final hours that led to a vehicle ending up buried in the most inaccessible, unmarked part of the Mojave? And most chilling of all, why did they never try to call for help? The truth was lost in the wind for nearly 2 decades, until 2 campers, a broken SUV, and a cassette tape opened the case once more. The Mojave has always drawn a certain kind of person. Hikers, seekers, the curious, the lonely, people who aren't necessarily trying to get away from something, but who feel like they might find something in the stillness that the rest of the world has forgotten. And long after the Brannon family was officially declared lost to the desert, it was these people, the wanderers, the off-roaders, the quiet investigators, who began to notice that something wasn't right. Not right in the usual way the desert can feel off. Too hot, too vast, too quiet, but wrong in the way a place can begin to feel watched. It began as murmurs on message boards, a thread here, a YouTube comment there. Hikers who had gotten off trail near Kelso or Granite Hills and returned shaken, unable to explain what had made them turn back. They would describe feelings of disorientation, sudden nausea, or hearing what they thought was distant radio chatter. Voices clipped short, caught in static, saying things that didn't make sense. Words like wait or wrong turn or stay down. There were rumors, too, always vague, never verified, that strange symbols had been found scratched into canyon walls, or that someone had once stumbled across a burned map case in a wash miles from any road, filled with hand-drawn routes and coordinates that didn't match anything in the area. Then came the page. In 2015, during a flash flood cleanup near a storm drain that runs under an old maintenance road outside Baker, workers found debris caught in a tangle of brush and rusted fencing. Among the waterlogged scraps, a fast food bag, a cracked boot sole, what looked like parts of an old sleeping bag, there was a single sheet of notebook paper sealed in a plastic sandwich bag. The bag was dirty and scratched, but the paper inside had mostly survived. At first glance, it was easy to dismiss. The handwriting was uneven, frantic. Probably a prank, people said. But what stood out wasn't just what was written, but how it was written. The note began mid-thought, like the writer had been interrupted. "We don't know how long it's been anymore. The sun never looks right. I thought I saw my mom, but she wasn't moving right. Something's wrong with her face now." There were no names, no dates, just 2 more sentences at the bottom, one of them underlined twice in thick pencil strokes. "He's still up on the ridge. He watches when we sleep. This place isn't empty." And then in the corner, as if an afterthought, or maybe a last-minute act of defiance, were 2 initials, pressed into the page with such force they almost tore through it. MB. Handwriting analysts who later saw the image online suggested that the note was written by a female, likely under duress. Whether it was real or not, no one could say for sure. But those two letters, MB, lit a fire across forums that had lain dormant for nearly a decade. Madison Brannon, the missing daughter, 17 years old when she vanished. Likely long dead. And yet, if it was her, the implications were too horrifying to accept, because that note, if real, meant someone had survived. Or worse, someone had not died in the way we thought. More stories followed. Hikers who found animal bones in spiral shapes. Off-roaders who picked up brief, disturbing bursts of what sounded like children's voices on long-range radios. Voices whispering numbers or reciting half-remembered songs. A trucker who swore he saw a girl in torn clothing standing barefoot on the edge of a fire road at 2 a.m, then vanished when he passed her. None of it was provable. All of it was just credible enough to keep the story alive. And then, of course, there was the photograph. The image had circulated for years on obscure forums and early creepypasta blogs, always uncredited, always watermarked, always dismissed as a fake. But after the SUV was discovered in 2024, it resurfaced with new intensity. This time it came with a version that had never been seen before, a higher resolution scan. Someone had apparently found the original Polaroid in a locked desk drawer in a ranger station being cleaned out after retirement. It showed 4 people standing in what looked like a wide, stony depression, possibly a dry wash or arroyo, with what appeared to be a stone altar at the center. They're standing around it, 2 on each side, facing each other. The photo is taken at dusk. The lighting is strange, uneven, almost like a spotlight is being cast from somewhere off-frame. The people in the photo are small, slightly blurred, but their silhouettes are unmistakable. 2 adults, a teenage girl, a child. The girl is holding something, a camera or maybe a recorder. The boy has something in his hand. The father figure stands behind them, staring directly into the lens. The mother is partially turned, her face just out of focus, her expression unreadable. Some say it's the Brannons. Some say it's just 4 people posing in a weird place. But one thing about the photo is deeply unsettling. In the corner of the image, barely visible in the shadow near the stone altar, is a shape. It's not a person. It's too tall. Its limbs are wrong. Its head is tilted at an unnatural angle, as if listening. When the image is enhanced, the pixels sharpen just enough to suggest a presence, not clearly, not definitively, but enough that you feel it. Enough that you wish you hadn't looked so long. Whether or not it was staged, no one could say. But in a desert that had already buried too many answers, the photo felt like something leaking through, a glimpse of the story trying to finish itself. And then, as if drawn by the buzz, the case broke wide open again. Because something had been recovered from the SUV. Not just the bones, not just the personal items, but the tape, the one labeled Night 3. And when investigators played it, they heard a voice. The Mojave keeps things, not like a museum, not carefully, not with intent, but like a desert does, swallowing everything under layers of heat and silence and dust, preserving not with care, but with indifference. For almost 2 decades, it held on to the last moments of the Brannon family without offering a single clue. And now, it had begun to give them back. But not all at once, and not gently. When investigators began the recovery process, the sun had barely risen over the ridge. The SUV, once unearthed, had already begun to collapse inward from years of sun damage, wind erosion, and rust. The vehicle had clearly burned at some point, possibly in the final days before its burial, but sections of it had remained oddly intact, shielded by the sand that had caked in and around it like concrete. Inside, the first and most immediate discovery was the bones. 3 sets. 2 adult, 1 adolescent. Their positions suggested they had been crammed toward the back of the vehicle, as if hiding or trying to escape something. 1 set, presumed to be the father, showed signs of fractures inconsistent with a crash. The mother's remains were partially shielded under what appeared to be camping gear. The adolescent's bones were tangled in the seatbelt. All 3 showed evidence of exposure, but not all showed signs of heat damage. Only 3. The Brannons had been a family of 4. Madison Brannon, the teenage daughter, was not among the remains. That discovery alone should have provided hope, a glimmer that someone had survived. But what investigators found next changed that hope into something colder, a sense of dread that crept in at the edges, slowly tightening around every theory. Near the rear passenger side floor panel, melted partially into the carpet and lodged between rusted metal and sand, was a camcorder. A Sony Hi-8 model, old even for 2006, but still popular among families who liked to document road trips. Its outer casing was warped, plastic bubbled in some places, the lens shattered. But miraculously, the mini-tape inside had survived. The forensic techs almost missed it. The compartment, jammed from heat warping, had to be carefully pried open with heat-controlled tools. The tape was labeled in handwriting barely visible under smoke stains. "Trip, Maddie's cam." The footage was damaged, fragmented. Some of it was nothing but gray lines and high-pitched whines. But parts were salvageable. And what survived was disturbing. In the clearest clip, the camcorder seems to be sitting on the dashboard, recording through the windshield. It's dusk. The horizon glows faintly, but everything around the vehicle is flat, dusty, empty. No roads, no signs. Just desert. A man's voice, low, agitated, says, "I told you we should have turned back an hour ago." Another voice, a woman's, responds sharply, "We've been over this, Jake. We followed the marker. We're still on the map." Then comes the voice of a younger girl, clearly holding the camera now. "This isn't the road anymore." A pause. Then something faint, barely audible under the wind noise. Static, maybe, or something else. A kind of crackle. Some viewers later claimed it was a voice. Others said it sounded like someone breathing into the mic from very, very close. The next clip cuts in sharply. It's dark now. The camera is shaking, handheld. They're outside the vehicle. The light from the camera illuminates only what's directly ahead, mostly sand and shadows. The girl's voice whispers, "We saw lights. We thought it was a ranger tower. But there's nobody." A sudden flash. The footage cuts out. The final recoverable clip is only 2 seconds long. It shows what looks like the inside of a tent. A child's toy, a plastic figurine, swings gently from a string tied to the tent's crossbeam. In the background, just barely, a low hum, rhythmic, not mechanical, more like chanting, then static. It wasn't just the footage. They found something else. Buried in the trunk area, inside a scorched metal lockbox, were what appeared to be survival materials: a compass, a cracked mirror, 2 flares, and 8 hand-drawn maps. Each map showed a different section of the Mojave, but none were accurate to any known trail systems. Landmarks were marked with strange labels: the Watching Rock, Whisper Hill, the Silent Crossroads. Some included small sketches, stick figures, dark clouds, spirals. One had the words "Keep West" written over and over in the margins, growing increasingly erratic, like the person writing it was losing control. But it was the audio tape that silenced the entire investigation room. Also in the lockbox, wrapped in an old t-shirt, was a microcassette recorder, the type used for dictation or personal notes. It, too, was heat-damaged, but like the camcorder, it had been protected just enough. There was only one recording, no label, about 30 seconds long. It begins with a voice, shaky, female, young, possibly Madison's. If someone finds this, I think we were tricked. He said the road was safe, but there wasn't a road. He kept smiling. His face wasn't right. My mom knew, I think. She kept looking back. Then we heard the music, but it wasn't music. A pause. They're not rangers. Don't trust the ones who offer help. Click. The tape ends. That one sentence would become the headline on every true crime blog, Reddit thread, and late-night podcast that picked the case apart for the next year. Don't trust the ones who offer help. Who were they? Why had the family gone off route? Why had the footage never been found until now? What happened out there that led to 3 bodies, and one girl who seemed to have vanished without a trace, but left behind a warning? The evidence didn't clarify the mystery. It deepened it. Answers were coming, but not the kind anyone wanted. It started with a stranger. On April 3rd, 2025, a man wandered into the emergency clinic in the town of Needles, California, a weather-beaten stretch of desert just southeast of the Mojave Preserve. He was barefoot, sunburned, gaunt, and mumbling. His hands were shaking. His lips were cracked from dehydration. He carried no ID, no phone, no wallet, just a small leather pouch tied to his belt with strips of torn denim. When the nurse at the front desk asked his name, he paused, blinked slowly, then said, "It doesn't matter. They already know." That alone might have landed him in psychiatric care, and, under normal circumstances, maybe it would have. But what he said next stopped the nurse cold. "You're asking about the Brannons, the family, from 2006. I was there when they were taken." The man was admitted immediately. Over the next 48 hours, between bouts of paranoia and intense fatigue, he was questioned by local police and then quickly escalated to the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. He refused to give his real name, instead referring to himself as "no one left." He claimed he'd been in the desert for a long time, though, when pressed, couldn't give specific dates. When shown a printed photo of the Brannon family taken from their missing persons file, he flinched. Then nodded. "The boy's name was Noah, the little one. He liked Power Rangers. We shared crackers the first night." He couldn't name the parents. He didn't recognize Madison in the family photo. "She didn't make it there. She stayed behind." But he repeated one thing over and over. They didn't die. They were taken. When asked who they were, his eyes glazed over. He'd only say, "The people beneath the stone." Authorities initially dismissed him as delusional, but in a case already riddled with impossible details, nothing could be ignored anymore. Eventually, under sedation and coaxed questioning, he began to describe what he remembered. He said he'd been hiking alone in the summer of 2006, near an old, unregistered mining outpost northwest of Kelso. He remembered seeing the Brannons, at least the boy and one of the parents, camped near a rock formation he called the Listening Wall. He didn't know their names then, just thought they were another family trying to cool off near natural shade. But what he remembered most vividly wasn't their faces. It was the people who came out of the canyon after sundown. They didn't walk right. Their feet didn't make noise. They moved like shadows, but you could hear them breathing. Too slow. Too deep. He said the Brannons were taken, not by force, but by something like hypnosis. The boy tried to run, but one of them touched his face. He stopped screaming after that. When asked why he hadn't gone to the authorities, he laughed. "They don't come back from there. No one listens. And they see you if you tell." Despite skepticism from law enforcement, Search teams were deployed to the area described, partly to verify the man's story, partly just to eliminate the possibility that this was another hoax. What they found changed everything. Roughly 3 miles northeast of the abandoned Zabriskie outpost, along a faint, unofficial trail, the team came across a natural depression, a shallow basin shaped by erosion, invisible from satellite due to thick rock cover. And there, partially sheltered by sandstone overhangs and scorched Joshua trees, was what appeared to be a ritual site. At first glance, it looked like a vandalized campsite, but upon closer inspection, the pattern emerged. Bones, small and large, arranged in spirals across the floor of the basin. Dozens of them, animal and human, though the distinction was blurred at first. Charcoal and ash had been spread around the perimeter, and strange markings, not quite runes, not quite symbols, had been carved into the rock walls surrounding the space. The lines weren't random. They intersected, overlapped, branched like roots. In one section of the rock, dried blood had stained the surface below a carved handprint. DNA analysis would take weeks, but when it came back, the results stunned the lab. The blood beneath that handprint, it matched Noah Brannon. This was no longer just a case of a family getting lost. The presence of their blood in a remote basin tied to ritualistic activity raised questions no one was prepared to answer. What had happened in those final days? Why was Noah's blood on the wall but his body found in the car? And what did the spiral patterns mean? One linguist brought in by the FBI noted that several of the symbols found at the site resembled proto-script glyphs from extinct desert tribes in Baja California, symbols that had no confirmed use in over 700 years. Another observed a repeating motif, a jagged line ending in a closed circle, like a road cut short. That symbol appeared 5 times around the edge of the spiral bone formations. In every case, the spiral ended where the jagged symbol began. The man who came forward, now referred to in documents as Subject Alpha, was transferred to a secure psychiatric facility for further evaluation. To this day, he insists he isn't crazy. He claims he was marked and allowed to leave, so someone would tell the story wrong, so they'd never believe it. But investigators began taking his final claims seriously when he provided one last piece of evidence, a hand-drawn map. It marked 3 locations in the Mojave. The SUV's final resting place was one of them. The ritual site was another. The third? A cave, still undiscovered. At the top corner of the map, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "She's still out there." The Brannon family's camera had been found scorched and half-melted in the back of the SUV, buried under layers of sand, cracked toys, and time. For months, forensic techs had dismissed it as too damaged to recover. The casing was warped by heat, and the battery long since eroded. But after public pressure and renewed funding following the ritual site discovery, a specialist lab in Los Angeles finally took a shot at extracting its contents. And against all odds, it worked. What came out wasn't much, a total of just under 4 minutes of corrupted footage. But those 4 minutes would become some of the most disturbing evidence ever recovered in the Brannon case, and arguably the most unsettling mystery in modern missing persons history. The footage was silent at first, static, skips, frame glitches, then a sudden jump cut, a horizon line, low and distant, jagged with mountains. The camera shakes slightly, as though it's resting on a rock or backpack. Someone's breathing. Loud, panicked, off frame. Then a voice. A girl's voice. "They're not human." Barely more than a whisper. "They look like us, but they're not us. Their eyes, they don't blink right." The screen flashes again. Another cut. Now it's night. A vast, dark field of desert stretches ahead. Grainy black and white. In the far distance, 3 faint red lights hover above the ridgeline. At first, they appear stationary, like flares or lanterns. But then one twitches. Not drifts, twitches. The movement is abrupt, unnatural, mechanical, and yet alive. The second follows, then the third. They begin to spin slowly in a triangular pattern. The breathing picks up. The camera dips slightly, as if the person holding it has just dropped to the ground or is hiding behind something. There's a sound, not quite a voice, not quite wind, something in between. It cuts in and out like a broken radio signal, but it's rhythmic, chant-like, repetitive. Another skip, frame break, the lights vanish. Then, footsteps. Rapid, chaotic. The camera is moving now, low to the ground, swaying wildly. Dust and brush flick past the lens. There's a voice behind it. Masculine, maybe the father's, yelling something unintelligible. The video stutters, freezes, then picks back up. That's when it happens. A figure suddenly comes into view. A teenage girl, sprinting directly toward the lens. Her face is pale, eyes wide, mouth open as if screaming, though the audio cuts out completely at that moment. Her clothes are torn. Behind her, shadows stretch long across the desert floor. And just for a moment, as the camera shakes violently, something else comes into frame. Not a person, not quite. A silhouette. Thin, with arms that don't swing when it moves. Just glides. The final frame freezes on the girl mid-run, her arm reaching toward the camera, toward the person holding it. The image distorts and locks. Then nothing but static. That's where the video ends. But it wasn't the only file recovered. Forensic audio teams managed to extract one final piece of data from the camera's corrupted storage. Not video, but a separate sound file, buried deep in the device's flash memory. Its timestamp was later than the video. The exact date was corrupted, but the time code placed it hours, maybe a full day, after the final clip. It lasts exactly 47 seconds. At first it sounds like a lullaby, a child's song, but the melody doesn't match any known tune. It's slow, mournful, echoing with strange minor harmonies, like someone humming a funeral dirge in a church that's too empty. The voice is soft, young, possibly female, but it's not in English, not in Spanish either, or any language recognized by linguists consulted during the investigation. Multiple attempts were made to transcribe and translate it. Some claimed it matched elements of Basque dialects. Others suggested phonetic patterns found in ancient Uto-Aztecan roots. One occult researcher claimed the song matched stanzas from a 13th century binding hymn said to trap spirits in desert stones. None of these theories could be confirmed. The last 5 seconds of the recording shift abruptly. The humming stops. Then, there's just one breath. Slow, shaky, followed by a whisper. She said I could leave if I sing it. Click. End of file. Authorities confirmed that the voice most closely resembled Madison Brannon, based on age progression models and voice print analysis against childhood home videos provided by extended family. But there was no way to know if the recording was made willingly or under threat. If she was still alive when it was captured, it would mean she, at least, survived long after her parents and younger brother. One investigator, off the record, put it simply, the camera shouldn't have worked, the file shouldn't have survived, and that voice, it's not the voice of someone who's just scared, it's someone who's been changed. By now, the Brannon case had left the boundaries of law enforcement. Forums exploded, documentaries launched, paranormal researchers flew in from across the country. Fringe theorists began drawing connections between the Brannon footage and a decades-old urban legend about the Sand Choir, a group of desert spirits that mimic the faces of lost travelers and lure them deeper into the dunes. One thread claimed the red lights seen in the video had been reported before by miners in 1911, and again by military pilots in 1952. A now declassified Air Force report from that year describes unknown aerial anomalies exhibiting behavior inconsistent with known flight technology, spotted near the same section of the Mojave. But what haunted people most wasn't the folklore. It was the emotion in that final clip, the fear in Madison's eyes. The way she ran toward the lens like she knew it was her only chance to be remembered. And the voice, singing something no one could understand, as if sending a message not meant for us, but for them. Whoever, or whatever, was watching. The sun bleeds low across the Mojave horizon, an orange dying glow flattening the jagged silhouettes of brush and rock. In the distance, a single flag flutters in the breeze, wedged into a rusted pole staked next to a scorched clearing of sand. This is where the Brannon family's SUV was found. The ground around it has become sacred. Locals and travelers have built a makeshift memorial here. At first, it was just a weathered cross and a few plastic flowers. But now, it's something more permanent. Smooth stones have been arranged in a circle around the site. Messages scrawled in charcoal or Sharpie line the nearby rocks. For the ones who didn't make it home. We still hear your voices. Someone's watching, even now. In the center of the memorial, protected by a sealed acrylic case, sits the final recovered item from the investigation. Madison Brannon's diary. Pages warped by heat and time, but still legible. The last entry is dated June 12, 2006. Scrawled in blue ink, barely holding its line, it reads, "We made it through the first night, but we're not alone. Something came to the edge of the camp. I didn't hear it walk. It just appeared. I think it's wearing my dad's voice." That's the final sentence. The next page is blank. 2 decades have passed. A new group of hikers, teenagers in dusty trail gear, weave through a narrow desert path about 15 miles from the memorial. It's a route recently opened up by a dry riverbed and some rare winter flooding. The group is filming on a smartphone, laughing about the heat and teasing each other. One of them, a younger boy, maybe 13, wanders slightly off the trail, following the glint of something half buried in the sand. It's a camcorder, dust-caked, cracked, the same make and model as the one found in the Brannon SUV. The boy lifts it carefully, blowing sand from its edges. It doesn't look like it should work, but it does. The device whirs softly, then clicks. The group turns toward him. He holds it up like a trophy. Then, without warning, the screen on the camcorder flashes. Static. There's no sound, no footage, just the faint outline of a frame burned into the screen. A girl, running. The screen glitches. The camcorder clicks again, then dies completely, cut to black. And just like that, we're back where we started. With a family that vanished. A daughter who whispered the truth into old magnetic tape. A desert that keeps its secrets. And a story that refuses to stay buried. Some say the Brannons never left the Mojave. Others believe they crossed into something else, a place just beyond what the human mind can map. Something ancient, something watching. But one thing's certain. If you stray too far off the path in the Mojave, you might find more than sun and sand. You might find what they left behind. Or it might find you. What do you think really happened out there? Was it something human, something ancient, or something else entirely? Drop your theories in the comments. We read every single one. Subscribe to the channel if you want more real unsolved mysteries like this. Share this with someone who loves creepy stories, and make sure they don't watch it alone. Because the Brannon story, it might just be the beginning. And the Mojave, it's not done speaking.